Hello, I'm Lisa Harrison, and today is Tuesday, the 7th, I believe, of February. And today I'm talking with Bill Wood. Bill is an ex-Navy SEAL who was also involved in some what you would call black ops. Black ops, what do you call it? Black ops technology,
Uh, Above top secret missions.
above top secret missions, and has only recently come out in the last several weeks or months, and to date has only spoken with Kerry Cassidy and Project Camelot. So this is Bill's first interview outside of that. And I'd like to start by saying welcome, Bill.
It's good to be here, Lisa, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak in an otherwise Project Camelot forum.
You're welcome. Now you've done one initial interview with Kerry that went for a couple of hours and where you got the chance to tell your story. And then there was a follow-up
Mhm.
with David Wilcock as well as Bill from Avalon. And then there was another one which was also live with an audience on Saturday. The first two went very well from my understanding. But Saturday there's been a bit of a backlash. Is there anything you would like to say or address about that?
Um, some interesting events that people may not be aware of happened the day of the interview. Number one, I received some panic communications from David Wilcox that Carrie was in great distress about my involvement with lightworkers.org. I think you should know of them. They're
Hmm.
based out of Australia as well, and somebody I've been working with for quite some time. I've also worked with many other groups, or still continue to work with many other groups, Anonymous, the Occupy movement, and very soon, hopefully, if I can get my name above board, I'll be working with the Thrive movement as well. All of which are wonderful, wonderful groups of people. And all of them have one thing in common. They're actually doing something to help change the world and not really sitting back on the sidelines and bitching about things, I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Hmm.
I got some information right before David contacted me that suggested that my interview was compromised and that I would not be getting a fair shake, so to speak. Um, and then I was also contacted by David Wilcock and was informed that Kerry was contacting him and freaking out about my involvement with lightworkers.org. As I am very much a spiritual person, in the sense that I do believe that that humanity has a chance and does have what it takes to evolve their consciousness and to be able to get past this illusion that we all live in
Hmm.
and see things for what they are instead of what we see on TV and the media and the news. I decided to do the interview anyway. I can disclose this that there was an incident back in 2009 with an interview that she did with Pete Peterson. Um, he basically, when he did that interview with her, and you can pull it up on Camelot, when he did that interview with her, she was asked ahead of time not to discuss certain subjects. And he was very distressed that those subjects were brought up and asked that interview never be released. It was instead posted and has been a sense of consternation between what I would say are the white hats or the oath keepers and Project Camelot.
Okay, Bill. Before you go on, I'm sure you can appreciate that I don't want to get in between any drama that you've got going with Camelot. Um,
Oh, then we shouldn't bring this up at all.
then that's between you and them. I was more addressing the viewers actually when it came to the backlash. Um, it seemed like
uh,
people weren't as supportive of what you were trying to say, at least in the first hour and a half, than you may have hoped. And I think that, personally, I think the issue is that when this, well, you can call it the truth movement, the big umbrella being the truth movement. It's kind of no different to the movie industry. You know, you've got your action stars and you've got your leading men and your romantic leads. And when someone like yourself comes out of the whistleblower cupboard on a particular platform, and in your case, platform is ex-Navy SEAL and involvement with Looking Glass. And that's what people want to hear you talk about. So hear you talking about, you know, the police department and the corruption. You know, I mean, it was like, where's that coming from? People didn't get why you were talking about that. So it was just people wanting you to stick to your genre, really.
Well, and I guess what I was leading into is that because I asked Carrie, told Carrie that there were certain things that I would not discuss, that she wanted me to discuss, particularly having to do with where I am and the people that are protecting me. That she also limited the scope of the interview and gave me a bunch of parameters that I was not allowed to talk about. And it was very frustrating that I was asked to talk about those things during the interview, even though I made it clear that I did not want to discuss them. And yet I was not allowed to bring up the subjects that I wanted to discuss because the scope of the interview was limited by Carrie. So it was very frustrating for me that I wasn't allowed to talk about the true things that I wanted to talk about because she didn't see the sense in them, or was afraid that she would get into some areas of spirituality that she doesn't want to deal with, even though I believe that's, honestly, it's part of the truth about what's happening, is that there is a sense of spirituality in what's happening right now, and the fact that we're being led to believe that well, I know what everybody wanted. Let's put it that way. I know everybody wanted to hear me say, you know, where to go get in the black limousines so they could be driven to the UFOs and put in their ascension machines and life would be perfect. Unfortunately, that is not reality. What is reality is that there is truth out there, and that the ends of those means are possible, but it's not that simple. There is free will involved and choice, and we do have to accept that we have a certain level of responsibility in this evolutionary process of ours and the ascension of our consciousness, and only then can we join our galactic brothers and sisters in a level of understanding that will make it so when we leave this planet, we don't run off and destroy everything in the galaxy just as we're destroying everything in the Earth.
Well, it's the spiritual side of things that I want to focus on today anyway. So this is your opportunity to do that.
Excellent.
I want to start, though, by
recapping. Because that's what I didn't talk about.
Okay. Well, I want to start by actually trying to recap what I understand Looking Glass is and the information that it gave you based on what I've heard you talk about so far, right? So Looking Glass is a technology that's been used at least since the 60s. Would that be right?
Since before I was born, I guarantee it.
Okay. Now, you did suggest on Saturday that using this device to look into the future may not have actually been its primary purpose, but it's what it was being used for.
And I believe I know basically what its primary purpose was. One of the subjects that of spirituality that nobody wanted to get into. If somebody of a higher level of consciousness were to use this machine, I think that it would be much more in tune for, in one statement, to talk to God or divine consciousness or commune with God. Certainly, it's a little hard to understand for third density people, and if we were given this tool, it would be impossible for us to use it properly because you can't be self-deceptive and still be able to understand how important a tool this would be to people of a higher density. Now, realize that all I was given ultimately was data.
That's
But
that's what I
this
wanted to
data,
that's what I wanted to just clarify, that you never used the device yourself. What you were given, I think it was the late 90s, was it not?
it was, yeah, 98. So
Right.
yeah, late
So you were given the
90s.
data that had been collected from all of the
Hmm.
people over the years who had used the device to look into the future, and you were asked to research that and use
Correct.
your own intuitive abilities to
Correct.
either come up with an alternative conclusion to what the data was
No,
suggesting.
that that was the only thing I was asked to do, is come up with an if I could come up with any alternative theories,
So,
because the data that I was giving all led to one point. There was no alternative theories.
in terms of how it worked, the image that I have is that, say you're in 1967 and you want to see into
Mhm.
1987, that what you're
Mhm.
seeing is possibly an unlimited number of timelines into 1987,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
And that
You do see an unlimited one, but the more possible futures are more prominent. They come through more easily, I guess is the easiest way to say it. Uh,
does this just spit out data in the form of, you know, numbers like a computer, or does it produce images?
it produces interlaced images.
So it is kind of
Um,
like watching a movie, a holographic
it,
movie or something.
it would be like watching a movie that's imposed with every other movie ever created, and you have to uh, use a computer basically to figure out which images go where, put them together, and then you've got every movie ever created. But the only one you want to watch is one.
So when you say, okay,
Very complicated stuff.
so when you say one timeline is stronger or comes through clearer, does that mean the images are just clearer for that?
um, they spend more time. They get more video time, I guess, is the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
Uh,
Did they then have the ability to insert information about hypothetical events and say, okay, if we put this person in as president, or if this particular natural disaster happens, and then see the consequences of that?
that is exactly what they do. I don't know if that's what they're supposed to do, but that's what they did. Yes.
Okay. So here we are, say 1967. We're looking into the future. We see unlimited possibilities, but the closer we get to 2012, the number of possibilities narrows and narrows and narrows.
Hmm. That
Okay.
is correct.
And
And
then,
you see less and less images that are interlaced together. It's very distinct. Yes.
I see. So then, no matter which timeline you're on, you get to 2012 and there's a wall,
And there's a wall.
regardless of
And
the
there,
timeline.
regardless of the timelines. And the timelines, as you get closer to this date, um, contract or converge into less and less timelines, until what the information that I got, we got down to two. And it's very, very hard to understand how that would happen. Um, and the only way that it can easily be explained is once you touch a hot stove and you burn yourself, you understand that you don't touch the hot stove anymore, and you
Hmm.
just don't do it anymore. That's how free will and choice works. If you get burned, you won't go back there. Well, eventually we learn enough through our own free will decision making in duality to know that the eventual conclusion of duality is to go back to that seminal Adam and Eve event where the knowledge of good and evil was chosen, and we just, figure out what would have happened if Eve would have put the apple down and said, no thanks, I'll just keep going with perfection as it is. It's a little tough to, summarize in a quick little interview, but that's the evolution of consciousness. The understanding that duality is an illusion that we've created to teach ourselves the experiences that we need to understand how to transcend duality.
So this event that you kept, or this wall, there
Mhm.
was no way of seeing beyond that.
It's the lack of time at that point.
And
And it's tough to understand what that means.
yes, from this perspective, it is. So,
Yes.
when you went into this, were you told that this event in 2012 corresponds with, say, the crossing of the galactic equator? Were you told anything like that, or is it just
um,
we keep hitting a wall? Can you see if we can find a way to not hit the wall?
the crossing of the galactic plane of our solar system, crossing the galactic plane, is a well-known event. If you're a physicist or a scientist, you study this. It's not a secret like it is to the rest of the world. So no, I've known about that event, man, for
You've
since I
previous to
I,
that.
I yes, I mean, got to spend a lot of time with very, very smart people in the military, and got to learn a lot about, let's just call it stuff.
Well, anybody who's into astrology, anybody who's following the main calendar, anybody who's studied any of the ancient or astrotheology, anything like that, they are also aware of crossing this
Oh
galactic
yeah,
plane.
I mean,
So
the
it's
the
not just the
knowledge is
scientific realm. Yeah.
right, but in the scientific realm, it's just as huge as it is to everybody else in all the other realms, because the scientists are looking at it from the problematic possibilities of what happens. There's a lot of energy that's getting blasted into the sun right now, and we see that effect. And they've been thinking about that for many, many years.
So now that we've gotten down to these two timelines, when did that kind of kick in? When did we really just get down to two, or have we yet?
We haven't. No. It we're still in the millions and billions of possibilities right now.
But are the
Um,
variations in those minute? Are they?
some are. Some cataclysmic events that could have happened have passed not happening. So some very big timelines have ended.
Hmm.
Many suggestions have been given. Would offer that one that would be on everybody's awareness was YU-55,
Hmm.
and there being a timeline where that asteroid struck the Earth right where NASA said it was going to.
Okay.
And something prevented that and moved the timelines ahead. And I certainly know that the technology exists for us to have changed that. Certainly, if you can use magnetic resonance theory to make a craft propel itself through the air and space, you can push against an asteroid and change its trajectory quite easily. It's just what we don't know about in our technology level currently.
I know this is possibly speculation, but do you believe that there are, or do you know that there are both, we'll call them white hats and black hats, I guess,
Yeah,
within
okay.
within the within the military and within these black ops above top secret departments? Are there both camps using the same
Yes.
technology, with access to the same technology, and actually kind of against one another?
Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, there is a war going on in America that nobody knows about.
Is it
It's
just within
not
America,
it's
though?
not a shooting war. No, I think it's throughout the world, but I definitely know the military's perspective from it. And there's a lot of people that are now aware of the technology that I'm discussing. That back then it was a small number of people that knew about this technology.
Okay.
And so anybody that is participating in this, I can't say what I know, but I can certainly exercise my free will and try to make it go one way or the other. There's people trying to create the end of the world, and there's people preparing for the end of the world and, surviving it. The people that are preparing for the end of the world know about it and are trying to prevent it would be called the white hats. The people in favor of ending the world and covering up the mistakes of the elites and the politicians are what you say the black hats. The people that are stuck in the middle, that's pretty much 99% of the population.
Yeah.
We don't have any choice in what's going on.
But we do, don't we, by exercising our free will for a better future?
That is what I'm trying to get people to understand.
No, I think people are really getting that message. When it comes
I
to
do
the
too.
positive timeline, were you able to see, or do you remember any specific events that would be seen as negative that we're still going to have to endure, even if the positive timeline comes off?
The possibility always exists that we don't have to endure a negative circumstance to affect the change to timeline 1. I don't know how to put it any other way.
I think I do,
yes,
because this is actually
there
getting
are
quite esoteric.
1,000 cataclysmic possibilities, and we have avoided every one of them to date. Every one of them. Some people would say that's a miracle. I would say it's fate.
You touched on something on Saturday, which I don't know, twigged something with me because of conversations that I've had recently, and that was
Yeah.
in the sense
Well,
of
doing that.
yeah, how can I put it? The creation and I think you talked about it in terms of paradox, but you were saying that out of the negative events, it's when we get into that negative or when we get into the darkness that we balance it back into the light. So what you just said then reminded me of that, in that we may not need a negative event to bounce from into the positive. So because it's only through cataclysm and change and hardship that we go, where's the light? I want more, I want hope, and all of that. Okay.
The reality is we need balance.
Balance.
We don't need extreme positive or extreme negative to affect this change in consciousness or this evolution in consciousness. What we're trying to achieve is no more dualities. So the absence of the positive and the negative, to where there is only balance.
What do you think World War III with Iran is all about then? Do you think that's pure propaganda in order to just drag us into a place of panic and fear? Or do you actually think they're going to try and pull it off?
Okay, this is one thing that I touched on that I got as close to it as I could during the interview without saying it. I gave a website during the interview, and Carrie commented on it. Oh, that's the Russian scientist. Yes. If Iran produced and was ready to reveal this level of technology that everybody in America would go, hey, if Iran has it, that means we have it. And if they had, the ability to show off this technology, it would be really, really, really bad for America. So what do? We lie, just like we always do. We paint the weapons of mass destruction label on it and say, we're going to blow it up. That's what we're blowing up.
What
There's
technology
no
specifically?
UFO, ET technology, things that we wouldn't even come close to understanding because it's been suppressed for more than half a century. So we look at it as this technology that doesn't exist except for, what space aliens would give us. Yet Nikola Tesla was pioneering this technology in the very beginning of the 1900s. It's impossible to believe that this evolution of technology just stopped in 1970.
No. Well, I think even Nikola Tesla said that he was He got some of his information from a friend from the stars or some such thing.
And more and more that seems to have been happening, because what I'm learning about free energy and this technology is that people all over the world that have never met, and if you've seen Thrive, Foster Gamble backs this up, are inventing technology. But none of them have ever had any contact with each other, yet they're creating the same technology in dozens of different places all over the world. There's something to that. If people are evolving their consciousness to such a level that they are given these revelations about how to create this technology, if you don't call it divine, I don't know what else you can call it. If it's talking telepathically to space aliens, then that's what it is. If it's communing with your higher self, and your higher self communes with other higher selves that aren't of this planet, then that's what it is. I'm not going to pretend to understand it. I'm only going to say that it's easily demonstrated that dozens of people throughout the world, because of my investigations, are creating virtually the same level of advanced technology that would blow people's minds.
Now, there's a lot coming out now about Tesla and what he did and what he was capable of doing and what he claimed he could do. And that's not going to stay secret for very much longer. I just want to ask you another question about the timelines. If we call timeline 1 the positive and timeline 2 the negative.
Correct.
In timeline 1, we hit this wall, humanity awakens, and those that are in what we call the elite, they karma catches up with them basically, and they pay the price.
And let me suggest that karma should catch up with them way before the end of time. I don't want to say the end of time, because that scares the hell out of people. But before we eliminate timeline 2, I believe that the elite's wheel of karma will come around to such a point that they have to pay. They need time to pay for their karma before that process is ended. So yes.
So we would be looking at something like that in the next few months to start.
Man, I would hope so. That's what I'm trying to push for happening, because it's all about free will.
So in timeline 2, they find a way around the wall, and they get to implement what we've come to call Prison Planet, and just keep on keeping on, getting away with it all, and the one world order is fulfilled. Is that
essentially? Basically, in timeline 2, to my best understanding, is the world splits into two groups. The elites and the people in the know go underground and stay underground for the rest of time. But, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And there's a group that survives, much smaller, on the surface of the planet. And they go on in a much different way, but duality never ceases to exist. I'm sure they're given another opportunity 26,000 years later, and everybody's allowed to get off the third density, roller coaster eventually. But certainly the evidence that I've seen suggests that there is a reality that does exist that is not our reality that has this happen.
An alternative reality.
Basically. And right now there's many alternative realities based on the infinite number of possibilities and free will being exercised. It's very complicated. String theory. It's all string theory. I could point you to the physicists that could tell you all about it, and they would lose you in about 5 seconds. But yes.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, you're familiar with David Icke's work?
You love David Icke. He's one of my favorites.
So, from his perspective, the very top of the pyramid of this elite hierarchy are fourth dimensional reptilians, right? So I don't know whether you've had any experience with that in your official capacity.
I have a really easy way of defining it. There's many, many words that are used to do that. But as we progress into the fourth density, there becomes an existence that has unconditional love, or the absence of fear, or lack of duality. But then there's a choice in between that level as well, and it's service to self and service to others. The reptilians, I would call the service to self people. Yes.
But this
And
is going
so
to sound like a really convoluted esoteric question.
that's okay. I'm good at those.
Okay. This is getting back to the point we were on before about the darkness kind of being a necessary catalyst to bring in the light, and that if it's the darkness, or if it's the beings of dark, or the beings of negativity, or the beings of service to self, if it's actually their objective to lose, and by what I mean by that is create darkness in order for the light to come in so that the light ultimately wins, they win by losing. Does that make sense?
Yes and no.
If it's your objective to lose the game, then you win by losing the game.
It's very easy to see it that way, and I'll explain.
But there's more to the question.
Right. If you don't know what darkness is,
yes,
then you have no understanding of light.
Exactly.
Light just is. If there is no night, you have no day. If there is no black, you have no white. If you don't understand the opposites in the game, then you can't understand this reason for duality. And yes, even the reptilians understand a lack of duality. They understand unconditional love. They live by it. But they do enjoy the fact that we do give our power to them if we choose to. And we choose to when they understand this concept of duality way better than us, so they're able to instill fear to cause us to basically enslave ourselves. And they also understand that that we are evolving, that this will eventually come to an end, which is why it's permitted or allowed, or a certain level of letting us exercise our free will without interference of the higher dimensions can exist. Do they take advantage of the rules? Yeah, they take advantage of the rules. But they understand they're part of the solution. Yes. They see their role.
Do you think that they ultimately have an investment in Timeline 1 coming off as well, and that it's purely the human element here that's at the top that has the investment in Timeline 2?
If you could put it any better way, I don't know how. That was a beautiful explanation.
Oh, okay.
They do have an investment of our evolution, just as every other member of this galaxy does.
That is okay. That's confirmation for me on a personal level. So that's good.
It's tough to understand, but you understand it, so that's really cool.
You alluded to something on Saturday, which I want to make sure I understood, because it was a bit of a paradox.
Okay.
That, or creates one anyway, that in more recent times for you, there's a theory floating around that the reason you specifically were brought in to do this work and to study this data was that they believed, whoever was in charge, that you were going to play a part in a catalyzing event that precipitates the awakening.
Correct.
The paradox is, by bringing you in and giving you access to the information, they've given you something to then come out with.
They unknowingly created a paradox, yes. And
it's the sort of thing that does your head in every time you watch a time travel film. It's like
Okay, let me make it easy because it's easy to understand and you've already done it, but I'll just simplify it. Um, what the lesson of the looking glass was is every time you create a negative paradox to try and change things, you also created its opposite, and it's a concept of holodynamics. Vern's a very good teacher of that, but um, by trying to create a reality that doesn't exist, you also create the solution inherently to that paradox. When you create a negative, its positive will exist somewhere in time and space in the same density. It's hard for the people in charge with all the money to understand this concept because they're very selfish and self-serving and just demand results without understanding reality. I think everybody can understand that.
Yep.
And so, yes, it's kind of funny that inherently, by doing what they've done, they continue to create the paradox that eliminates that eventuality. And this is what scientists pointed out to them over and over and over and over and over again, and why it comes down to just timeline one. Because every smart PhD, way crazy smarter than me, told them the same thing. You can't prevent fate. You can't prevent the end of this lesson called duality from its eventual conclusion, which is that we understand the purpose of duality. And the purpose of duality is to teach us unconditional love, that we are all made of the same energy, the same divine information. I want to use the right word that's easiest to understand for everyone, not just for the spiritual people. We are created of the same information. And there is something out there that has all the information. And because if you have all the information, you know best. And in knowing best, you know that your creations, if they are given their free will eventually learn what they need to learn to transcend a lack of understanding. And when that lack of understanding takes place, we don't go back. We achieve this knowledge that makes it so we can no longer deny the truth. We would never ever believe in weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, there would never be another Iraq. It's that kind of thing. That is a seminal lesson in our history. We as Americans, not you guys, but we as Americans discovered concrete in most people's memory that our government lies to us, and they will continue to lie to us. And now people are taking a look at the events of 9/11 going, you know what? I don't believe that Building 7 fell down due to structural loss. And that's one of the things that I've been chastising ex-Navy SEALs about, is they're all demolition experts. Every one of us look at those videos and go, that ain't right. That shouldn't have happened. That's completely wrong. Buildings do not lose structural integrity throughout the building all at once unless somebody did it on purpose. So yeah, there's plenty of people out there that would just state, and there's plenty of information on documentary videos of demolitions experts from different countries that were shown Building 7 and not told what it was, and says, what is this? Oh, that's the demolition of a building. Do you know this is Building 7? You're kidding.
I actually last year on the anniversary had a conversation with several people, and it came out they didn't know anything about Building 7. What's Building 7? I nearly fell over. But
well, a news reporter in the BBC didn't know that Building 7 was in a live shot right behind her when she announced its destruction.
Yeah, 20 minutes before it came down.
Huge oops!
Yep. So
yeah, lots of anomalies that I can point out, but until people start accepting reality, reality is what we define it
So what
as.
it sounds like in even a simpler language, sorry, is that timeline one is inevitable. It's part of the plan. It's the divine plan. And every time they
Yep.
tried to mess with it, all they actually did was strengthen it.
Hmm.
That the opposite just went in and strengthened it.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's difficult to accept that, there are realities out there that don't produce this lesson being learned. Um, but from every indication that I get and see, and everything that I've seen in the last 10 years, the lessons that we are being taught lead up to this, you know, divine transition where we understand that this world is not reality, that it is just as real as the dream world that we enter when we fall asleep. And it's simply a way of us learning a divine lesson.
Mm.
And when that divine lesson is achieved, we transcend into something that we really want to do.
So do you see this wall in December
Mhm.
as a specific event on a specific day, or do you see it as a gradual thing that happens, well, that's been happening and will continue to happen until that time? I mean, why that day? I mean, is something magical going to
Um,
happen on that day?
I don't think it's the day per se, but I do, from my understanding, see that it does occur around that time. And
So there is a
there is some,
moment. There is a
yes,
moment.
yes. And basically, when there's some correlation to the crossing of the galactic plane and the energies that are being introduced into the planet right now and into every being on the planet. And they are definitely making changes.
Mm.
And those changes are causing an evolutionary process to either speed up outrageously fast or are leading to an inevitable conclusion that we don't understand. And it's tough to get that we are going to learn so much in less than a year that we are going to be able to evolve our consciousness. But I think it's easy to also point out that in metaphor terms, caterpillars are consumers for a very long time. And I've been using the term caterpillars. We are caterpillars of information. We consume and consume and consume and consume until we get so bloated that we form this, we fall asleep and form this cocoon. And for a very short period of time, we stay in this cocoon and then we burst out and turn into something else. I think the rest of the galaxy is kind of waiting to see what comes out of the cocoon. Because they, like we know, butterflies emerge from the cocoon. That's kind of the process that we're going through now. It is that kind of inevitability where everybody that's been through the butterfly process knows what happens, but we don't. We're going through it. We don't understand what's happening inside the cocoon. But I think everybody would also understand, if you use that metaphor, to understand the way life is right now, that the forces of good and evil are really hammering away at each other
Mm.
right now. And it does seem that there could easily be this eventuality where this balance is achieved. And we do understand that it's our own illusions that we're creating right now that lead us to believe that we aren't more powerful than we are. We give up our free will in order to believe in certain things that make us comfortable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's who we are.
In terms of what pe- what people, what you're recommending for people to do, or how to behave and how to think between now and the end of the year, to summarize that, it's basically to make your decisions based on a, what we said before, service to others perspective, to let go
Yep.
of fear.
Yep.
And every time we do that, we reinforce timeline 1.
Correct. Faster. Eventually, we are going to give up our fear, and we are going to be more service to others. Whatever negative events press us to that, it's going to happen. So if we just accept it now and start trying, like a person that's really overweight, if they can accept that the only way that they're going to fix the problem is to start eating better and exercising, they won't have to get any more out of shape before they make the decision. Now, everybody's like, well, what if you never make the decision? Overweight person faces the inevitable consequences and dies. Well, what if you can't die? There's no dying in this process. There is an evolutionary process that if one person dies, it doesn't end the evolutionary process. The process is always ongoing and always has been ongoing. We can't just stop the process. And again, that's what I learned in Looking Glass. It's a bunch of scientists looking at a spiritual problem and trying to convince people that there is no scientific answer.
Okay. So, in terms of what happens between now and then, world events, were you able to see anything specific? I know you've talked about the idea that
Many things, yeah.
that new technologies will be brought out and so on. But what about, is there anything that people can look to as a confirmation that you know will happen because you saw it in Looking Glass and it was a really strong image and it's an inevitability, just as a sign, this is what I saw, this is what I believe is going to happen. That's confirmation we're on the right timeline.
Right. I pointed it out. Resource scarcity ceases to exist. The fact that we're dependent on petrochemicals is an illusion.
So you think that's actually going to come about this year?
Oh, it has to.
So it's not after the awakening. That's not something that happens afterwards. That's before.
No. This is a step in the process. This has to happen. Because resource scarcity is something that keeps us in fear. And distracted. If you're too worried about earning a paycheck and getting enough money to provide the resources to survive, you don't have time to take care of your spirituality. You don't have time to figure out the things that people are figuring out right now all over the world. But the elite are making things so bad that people are out of work. And when people are out of work, what are they doing with their time? Well, they're studying spirituality and they're coming up with these answers. And they're seeing that they do have the capability, even though times are really, really tough, aka the negative, that they have the ability to create the positive by having hope. And then they start to believe in hope, and then they start to create hope, and then good things happen in their lives, so they keep going. And after they get a job, they're not going to stop creating and believing in hope. So, they start to, figure out good things for humanity and blah, blah, blah. You can see how it goes. It's funny, but it's just an inevitable resistance towards polarity. And it is a balance that's being achieved. And I've tested this theory by going out and asking people if they would donate $1 to change the world. And you would be shocked at how many people are able to believe in change so much and to be guided to change so much, and yet don't understand how such a simple act of free will changes things. It doesn't change my monetary condition, but it changes something in their mind where they say, I'm about changing the world. I think that can happen. Now that they believe that change the world can happen, they start creating it in their lives. And that radiates out to their families and their friends, and it's just going to pick up momentum like crazy now. So I've I can not only speak to, what I know from Looking Glass about it, I can speak to what I know about my scientific conclusions on it, and saying that there is a tremendous number of people throughout the world, not just America, but throughout the world, that are saying, you know what, I believe in change. I'm done with all this being in fear of a bunch of stuff that I've later figured out was bull. I
Well,
was
the
scared
Occupy
of
movement's
weapons.
global, and
Yes, that is a perfect example. When that happened, I was jumping up and cheering and saying, "Woo, timeline one!" It's happening. That is an evolution of consciousness. That is people standing up and saying, "We're poor because you make us poor. We're poor because you create the money. Money is an illusion that you've gotten us to believe in. We shouldn't have money. We should have prosperity." Thrive is another perfect example of people waking up and seeing that. It spells it out how the illusion works with money and shows us how to change. And it is going like gangbusters right now, too. There's many, many examples out there throughout the world. If you get down to the individual level, free energy, there's tens of thousands of people out there that have created some device that is down the avenue of free energy that creates energy, water, food, transportation, and shelter without much time or inconvenience, and can be offered to the world very easily. That's going to continue to grow until it takes off on a global basis.
in America, you've got a presidential election coming up this year. From Looking Glass, is there anything you can say about that?
I wouldn't. There's plenty of timelines that exist on who would be the president next.
Wasn't Hillary told she was going to be in 2012?
Yes, that is, again, plenty of timelines still exist right now. Plenty of ways of getting to our inevitable destination exist still. To be able to sit down and say, I know that this person's going to be president, would be wrong, because I already know of events that somebody said knew took place, that the possibility was so outrageous that you would go to Vegas and put $1 million down on this bet, and it didn't happen. The small possibility of something else happening happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've gotten done trying to understand, the path that's going to lead to the destination.
But ultimately, the path doesn't matter. The destination is inevitable.
That's exactly the point. Our destination is inevitable. We are trying to get somewhere. The journey is the fun part, but the journey is what it is. We can take any path on our journey to the destination, but eventually we're going to be led to our destination because we're going to eliminate paths to our destination on our journey.
And we can make the journey or the path to our destination easier and easier and easier by constantly choosing love or choosing
seemingly easier
or
seemingly harder. Certainly it would be easily argued by me that I have chosen a very hard path, and that the consequences of my choices were hard. But my understanding of hard in this reality is that usually the hard path, the quote-unquote hard path, is the correct one. And that's done because people that understand the journey better know that if they can keep us running around on these paths that are easy but eventually lead back to the path that we need to take to get to our destination, it's going to take longer and it's going to be harder to get to our destination.
Understood.
But yes,
yeah.
it's the theory of like a rich man. Uh, it's easier for a rich man to get to heaven than it is to pass a camel through the eye of a needle. We've been taught these things over and over and over again. Yet, in my life, when I gave up all of my material possessions in concentrating on this belief that I have that we could affect this positive change now, today, and that would make life for everybody much, much easier. It's been arduous. I mean, it's been hard for me. I'm not going to lie. uh, I have many times questioned how hard this journey how much harder this journey would get before I found some relief. Well, now I found the relief. Now I've got some good things going for me, and some real gifts are coming in my life that make my journey much easier. And I'm kind of trying to use that as an example to everybody else.
Oh, good. I'm glad things are looking up.
The easiest way to fight darkness is with light. And now that the situation is out in the open, and 250,000 people know about it, it would be very tough to do things and not have everybody understand or give confirmation to anything that I'm saying. Right now, the goal is discreditation, and undermining my credibility. You might get called a kook, but that's about the worst thing that's going to happen.
Oh, believe me, this is not the kookiest interview I've done.
So, based on your background, I don't think there's any problems, because you are just putting another person on the air that's, they can just point to you and say, she's just doing the same thing that she always does, putting kooks on the air. And that gives them more ammunition to say, see, Bill's a kook. He's going on another kook show. If I was, doing a Rachel Maddow show, well, that would be an entirely different thing. But right now, the best thing that anybody could do for themselves and me to ensure a much better world is to keep bringing the subject up and bringing things to light. And what's happening right now behind the scenes that nobody can see, but I can, is that people are coming out. Their stories are coming out. We may not be able to put them on the air, but they give us more information that we wouldn't otherwise have. And when we get that information, we're using it. And it's like a puzzle. We're putting these pieces that people are giving us together with and creating a whole picture. I'll be the front man. I'll go up and say, this is what we found out, and continue to bring more and more light onto the situation until eventually enough people's understanding of what's really going on reaches a critical mass, and then understanding becomes, more than just, a bunch of kooks conspiracy theories. It becomes reality. And the thing is it is reality. The illusion is what we believe in, is what we watch on TV, is what we see on the news and what we're told. There's a lot of people that use the words they say. They say this, they say that, without ever actually knowing who they are. The people that are attacking me on the internet right now are, for the vast majority, nameless faces and nameless voices. And they are saying a bunch of stuff about me that they know. But in all reality, there's no knowledge. A bunch of ex-Navy SEALs are saying, and I hate using that word, but former Navy SEALs, and will continue to be Navy SEALs throughout their life. And that's my kudo to them, because every Navy SEAL that completes training and participates in a program can't get away from that training, which is something somebody pointed out to me, and it's going to make me able to prove I was a Navy SEAL eventually. We can talk about that in a second. But they say they know that there's no SEAL Team 9. How do they
It's
know?
like trying to prove a negative, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly it. They're trying to prove the absence of a SEAL Team 9. Well, the fact that the number 9 exists between 8 and 10 certainly leads people to the conclusion that there probably is a SEAL Team 9 that nobody knows about. Just like up until like 6 months ago, there was no SEAL Team 6. Even though we later found out in history that SEAL Team 6 actually existed. They were a top secret team that eventually led to an attack that captured and killed Osama bin Laden, quote unquote. But we don't even know that happened. We were told that. We didn't get any video. We didn't get any evidence. We didn't get any proof. We just got a news report. And that news report was reported on by other news agencies, and it spread like wildfire until everybody knows, A, SEAL Team 6 exists now, and we kind of just overlooked that fact, that they didn't exist until then, and B, that Osama bin Laden's dead. Well, who's to say he wasn't dead for a really, really long time before that? Who's to say he isn't still alive? We don't have any proof. Zero. But everybody that you ask will say, I know SEAL Team 6 exists, and I know that bin Laden's dead. Why? They were told.
By the TV.
Simply that. Yeah, the TV. It's funny that people just don't pick up on this, about what they know and what they don't know.
Oh, I think people are getting more and more savvy every day.
And we call that the awakening process, where people start to understand that, wait a minute, just because I'm told something, that doesn't make it true.
Is there anything you really want to leave people with? If you had to define the Bill Wood message, what is it?
It's very simple. We do not understand who we are right now. We are who we are because of our level of understanding. As soon as we start to understand more about ourselves and who we are, we will change our thinking. And when that thinking changes, we will change what we believe in. And that belief in ourselves is what will make it so we create a completely different world. And when we stop accepting what we know as information and start accepting that we don't know, and that we need to go out, we need to seek, we need to find and understand what is true knowledge, then the cup won't be full anymore, and we can actually fill it.
Once we accept that we don't know what we don't know.
But right now we're full glasses, and we need to understand that we need to empty ourselves a little bit so some real knowledge can be poured in. And to do that, we need to eliminate the knowledge that isn't true, the illusion. And more people are choosing to do that every day. If you see and hear what I see and hear, you see that it's going exponentially.
Absolutely.
And that it is inevitable that everybody at some point will accept that true knowledge is the only real knowledge. And the illusion that's created to fill our minds and keep us occupied and cause us to concern ourselves with things like, who won the Super Bowl and who's getting eliminated from Dancing with the Stars isn't real knowledge, real information. It's something that has been created to occupy our thoughts and our minds so we don't get into real believing and real creating. And so if I could leave everybody with one message, it's that I know for a fact we create what we believe. We have simply to only truly change our beliefs, and the world will bend around those beliefs, and the world will change. And
my favorite saying, you get what you expect. And if you change your expectation.
Yep. If you get that, just change your beliefs a little bit and see what happens in your life, in reality. We're powerful, absolutely powerful. We're just blind to
Actually,
that
you
brilliance.
reminded me of something now, which was that part of your training was telepathy, remote viewing.
Yes, you want to. That's one thing that I wanted to get to, but I wasn't allowed to do it on Carrie's
The,
show. Telepathy. Everybody saw me use telepathy on my second interview. Um, what Eva wasn't allowed to bring out was when I started babbling on about her, somebody that I'd never met and only communicated with twice on email. She was watching the interview and was having a deep conversation about me with her son, more than 1,000 miles away from where I was. And because of that connection that we had, I was picking up on it. And more importantly, I couldn't do anything except comment on it because I knew what was happening. Now, people can say, oh, it's just a coincidence. Oh, it's not a fact. But she'll tell you that she was sitting there saying some very deep thoughts to somebody else, and then seconds later, I say her name during the middle of probably the most important time in my life. And if you believe in coincidence, then it was a coincidence. If you believe in connections and reading people and telepathy, then I just exercised an ability that is inherent to every human being, yet because we don't believe in it, we don't exercise it, and because we don't exercise it, we
so
don't
part of that
have it.
training was to convince you that the ability to do these things came as the result of the specifically the training, or in some instances, I can't speak. Some instances, implants.
That's fine.
That it was like,
Um, and that's the funny thing, is that we were never taught that the reason we could do these things was because we believed we could do them. We were taught because of the training we could do them, or because of the implants we could do them. It was in all purposes the placebo effect. Once we truly believed we could do it, we demonstrated that ability.
I see how that gives them the control to take it
Mm-hmm.
away from you by removing the implant. But when it comes to training, if you've been trained in order to do, how do they take that away from you?
They put you in a psychological hospital for 6 months, pump you full of drugs, and convince you of all kinds of things that don't exist. And they do very, very horrible things to your mind. And that was another portion of the interview that didn't come out very clearly, and I'm disappointed. But some good things have happened, and some people have come forward that have had that happen to them, and now some incredible things are going to happen because of that. So even though the interview appeared, bad, some amazing things have come from it. So I'm not disappointed.
Some good things for you personally, or some good things
For people that need help. For people that
Okay.
have had experiences similar to mine that came out and said, I'm not going to go on TV, but I could use some help because I know this happened to me.
And there's an ex-military, or a wide range of people.
There's ex-military and people that were never in the military but were under a heavy level of control inside society. And I suggested one of those people during the interview. It's not that person. It's not Corey Feldman. I know Corey Feldman has experienced a huge amount of this mind control experience and tragic things happening into his life that have caused him to make the decisions that he's made with his life. And I know he desperately wants to reveal what has happened to him and name names, but he's afraid. Just like all of us, because we've seen bad things happen to people just like us. It's
What I got out of, in terms of you, the way Saturday's interview started, and with the information you were sharing, what I took from that was that you were trying to get that very point across. The fact that you were even speaking at all was a bit of a miracle. That your brain had been and your mind had been so broken.
And another miracle is that that fate brought me to Eva, and that Eva has worked so hard to understand the subject that she can even help me on a continuing basis, and that now I have access to the resources that she's been studying, and I'm getting more help to undo the damage. But that was the point of the whole interview. That was the earth-shattering thing that everybody missed, is that number one, I broke my programming all by myself, and number two, that I haven't been thrown back into a mental facility and been forced to undergo the same torture to get me back under control. It's not going to be seen as a big deal for a very long time, but history will show that, something, that it was a big deal, that somebody stood up and said, man, this happened. It really did happen.
I've noticed in the chatter since that people are coming from two different camps when it comes to what observing I really can't speak today. Observing your behavior, in that you spend a lot of time rocking on the chair and to and fro, and there was throat clearing and things like that, and there were those who were supportive were seeing it as signs that you was, even in those moments, trying to break through triggers to keep speaking. Not
triggers, but probably talking about, when you talk about things that people are just going to hear and say, it's too incredible to believe, and they just shut down. And it's so unreal that they just won't accept it. And they'll find any excuse in their minds to discredit or discount what I'm saying. And yeah, I have to deal with those thoughts, because while I'm saying things, I'm just thinking, nobody's ever going to believe me. But at the same time,
take this the right way. I think you're underestimating the audience. Because
since then, I have figured out that isn't the case, and that there's thousands of people that have come privately in support of me, sent me emails, and said, man, if you just keep going, you're going to be so much better. Just keep going, man. A lot of former military have come forward and said, I can't go on camera, but I will tell you this. A lot's happened. It's been quite wonderful. So to discount anything that happened in the interview that was viewed as bad, and we also have to remember the Department of Disinformation here in America that pays thousands of people to stand up and be very vocal and very chatty about these kinds of things. It's very real. And yes, that exists. It's happening. And I have to get past all of that, too. There's a reason that this big event, this big negative in my life is there, and it's to keep people from believing what I have to say. It worked for a really, really long time. And I'm sure it's very, very difficult for some people in high places and, buildings with no windows, chatting it up in conferences about how people are actually believing me after I basically disclosed one of the most awful things that one person could do to another, and have people still see that as integrity and guts and courage.
It had to come from you. Otherwise, if that stuff was, if you were outed as such, then you would have lost all credibility. It had to come from you. And I think above and beyond all of that, people are totally invested in and believe in and can feel the truth of what you're saying in regards to the timelines.
Well, and I hope so, because it is the truth, and life is proving me correct. Every day that goes by, we advance forward towards that truth, and people can see it just a little bit more clearly than they were the day before. And a lot of people have a lot more hope about the eventuality of what I speak of simply because I've come forward and talked about it and reinforced what they feel inside their hearts, what they've always believed. That, yeah, everything seems really, really, really bad right now, but it can't always be this way. There's a lot of people that feel that things aren't right and change needs to happen. And I'm just going to keep moving forward with that. And if I can be the person that embarrasses himself and takes flack and, looks like the crazy nut, for now, I'm fine with that. I can have that role because I see further down the path. I can understand that eventually people will see what's happening differently, and more people will accept that this change is happening, and it will reach a critical mass, and then it will change. And then after that, everybody's going to look back on this and go, man, I'm glad that guy did that. I'm really happy that guy did that. I really don't care about anything else. So, yeah, we'll get there.
Well, thank you, Bill. I really want to let you know how much I appreciate you doing this with me today, and because I think this message has to get out above and beyond anything else. That it's up to us, at least in terms of the events between now and the inevitable wall, the path that we take, we can make that easier and easier on ourselves and each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about making some really heart-based, positive choices.
Yep. And though those choices may seem like they have difficult consequences now, you won't care once you get to the destination, the inevitable destination, because that's going to be the good spot that everybody understands once we get there.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.